This is a true story, a cold, blood-soaked field in Holzwihr, France. It's January 1945. The air is so freezing it hurts to breathe, and the ground is a slurry of mud and half-frozen slush. A young man, looking more like a high school freshman than a soldier, stands on the edge of total annihilation. Behind him, his unit, Company B, is decimated. In front of him, the terrifying silhouette of 6 German Tiger tanks emerging from the mist, supported by over 250 elite infantrymen. Most men would have accepted their fate. Most would have retreated or surrendered, but Audie Murphy was not most men. He climbs onto a burning M10 tank destroyer, a vehicle that is essentially a giant steel box filled with gasoline and live shells. It is a ticking time bomb. The flames are roaring, the heat is blistering his face, but he grabs the .50 caliber machine gun and begins to roar back at the German army. Alone, abandoned by hope, outnumbered 250 to 1. This isn't a scene from a Hollywood blockbuster. This is the real, documented history of a boy from Texas who was told he was too small to fight and ended up becoming the most decorated soldier in American history. Today, we go deep into the ledger of Audie Murphy. We aren't just looking at the medals. We're looking at the soul of a warrior who refused to break, even when the world was literally exploding beneath his feet. To understand why Audie didn't run from that burning tank, you have to understand where he came from. He wasn't born into glory. He was born into the dirt of a sharecropper's farm in Hunt County, Texas. He was the 7th of 12 children. His life started with a series of abandonments. His father, a man who couldn't handle the crushing weight of poverty, walked out on the family, leaving them with nothing but hunger. By the age of 5, Audie was already a provider. He didn't have a childhood. He had a rifle. He would spend his days in the Texas brush, hunting rabbits and squirrels. He couldn't afford to miss. A missed shot meant his brothers and sisters went to bed with empty stomachs. This is where the legendary marksman was born. Not in a military academy, but in the desperate struggle for survival. Then, tragedy struck again. When he was just 16, his mother died. Audie was left alone, responsible for his younger siblings, with no home and no future. When Pearl Harbor was attacked on December 7, 1941, the war didn't just represent a duty to Audie, it represented a way out. It was a chance to finally belong to something bigger than his own suffering. But the military didn't want him. When he walked into the Marine Corps recruitment office, they took one look at his 5'5" frame and laughed. They called him the babyface kid. The Navy turned him down too, claiming he was underweight. Even the Army paratroopers shook their heads. Eventually, he managed to squeeze into the infantry as a regular private. The Army thought he was too frail for the front lines. They tried to push him toward a desk job or the kitchen. Little did they know, they had just enlisted the most lethal asset the Allied forces would ever possess. Audie's war started in North Africa, but it was in the rugged mountains of Sicily and Italy that the babyface killer emerged. He quickly rose through the ranks, not through politics but through sheer bravery. He had a sixth sense for danger. He could smell an ambush before it happened. But it was the invasion of southern France that changed him forever. It was here that Audie lost his best friend, Laddie Tipton. During a fierce firefight, a German soldier stood up and waved a white flag. Tipton, believing in the rules of war, stood up to accept the surrender. It was a cowardly ruse. The Germans opened fire and Tipton fell, dead before he hit the ground. In that moment, the Audie Murphy who hunted squirrels for food died and something far darker took his place. He didn't just return fire. He went on a rampage that soldiers who witnessed it still couldn't describe decades later. He seized a German machine gun and, with tears of rage in his eyes, cleared out every single enemy position in the area. He didn't care about his own life anymore. He only cared about the mission and his fallen brothers. By the time the winter of 1945 rolled around, Audie had been wounded multiple times. He had malaria. He was exhausted, but his unit was tasked with holding the Calmer Pocket, a vital piece of ground that the Germans were desperate to retake. This leads us back to that burning tank destroyer. When the German attack began, Audie realized his men were going to be slaughtered. He ordered them to retreat into the tree line while he stayed forward to direct artillery. But the artillery wasn't enough. He needed more firepower. That's when he saw the M10. It was abandoned, smoking, and caught in the crosshairs of German Tiger tanks. He climbed up anyway. He fired that .50 cal until the barrel was glowing red. He stayed there for an hour, his leg bleeding from a fresh wound, screaming coordinates into a radio while bullets whizzed past his head. He held back an entire German company alone. When he finally ran out of ammo, he hopped off the tank, and just as he reached his men, the vehicle exploded behind him. He didn't even look back. He just ordered his men to counterattack. When Audie Murphy returned to the United States, he was a god among men. He had 33 medals, including the Medal of Honor, the Distinguished Service Cross, and 2 Silver Stars. He was the face of the American victory. Hollywood came calling almost immediately. Legendary actor James Cagney saw Audie's face on the cover of Life magazine and knew he had to be a movie star. Audie eventually starred in over 40 films, most of them westerns. But the most famous one was To Hell and Back, where he played himself. Think about the psychological toll of that. A man suffering from severe combat trauma, forced to reenact the most terrifying moments of his life in front of cameras for the world's entertainment. But behind the glamour of Hollywood, Audie was fighting a private war. This is the part of the ledger that most history books skip. He struggled with what we now call post-traumatic stress disorder. At a time when men were expected to be stoic and silent, Audie was living in a nightmare. He slept with a loaded M1911 pistol under his pillow. He suffered from chronic insomnia and terrifying flashbacks. He became addicted to sleeping pills just to get a few hours of peace. But here is where Audie's heroism took a different form. Instead of hiding his struggle, he became one of the first public figures to speak openly about battle fatigue. He demanded that the government do more for veterans returning from Korea and Vietnam. He used his fame as a shield to protect those who were suffering in silence. He knew that the war doesn't end just because the guns stop firing. For Audie, the war lasted for the rest of his life. On May 28, 1971, the man who survived the greatest machinery of death ever assembled was taken by a simple plane crash in Virginia. He was only 45 years old. He was buried at Arlington National Cemetery with full military honors. To this day, his grave is the second most visited site in the cemetery, right after the tomb of the unknown soldier. Audie Murphy was a man of contradictions. He was a gentle-looking boy who became a lethal warrior. He was a hero who hated the word hero. He was a man who won every medal possible, but spent the rest of his life trying to forget the actions that earned them. His story tells us that true greatness isn't about physical size or bravado. It's about what you do when the world is burning around you and everyone else has walked away. He was the kid they said was too small, the boy they said wouldn't last a day, and he proved them all wrong. As we close the ledger on Audie Murphy, ask yourself, what would you have done on that burning tank? Would you have run, or would you have stood your ground? History is written by the people who stay. And Audie Murphy, he stayed until the job was done. He was a rejected hero who became a legend, and his name will remain at the top of the ledger forever.